And so then in order to backfill that, we have to access COVID money. And so that's
what exactly does access and hi, Commissioner SEC Liza there. What does accessing COVID money mean?
We have to make a request, and the request process is that it goes into MMB, then it goes back, like the one I just did for some housing and for some supplies, some medical things, hand washing stations, just some things like that. Ultimately, when we made that request, it goes to the health department because there has to be and this is all grounded in the statutory requirement that there is a review by the health department, by the submitting commissioner, by the governor's office, and by MMB. It then gets sent, once it's approved through that process, it goes to then a joint committee, which is made up of House and Senate minority and majority leadership, and they vote, and it either passes by a majority, it is a split vote, which would mean that there's no action and it passes, or it's going to be denied, and so that's what that accessing COVID money means. There was an appropriation of $200 million that the legislature made. And that this is the process that was ultimately negotiated as part of that. And so in order to access COVID money, we have to make a request and it goes through that process.
Now, let's say you wouldn't necessarily get all of the finances that you would want allocated. It sounded to me like you all are looking at other potential avenues to internally generate some of that, and if that's the case, I'm definitely going to want to hear just a little bit about what are you all thinking
about our internal options?
Right.
I'm going to be honest. We don't have a ton. We have a supplemental, but we had a supplemental budget that was requested, and we don't know what the future of that's going to be.
Okay, no. I think that's good, Commissioner. I thought that I was hearing you basically say that you were going to divert some of the revenue that's raised to other COVID related instances, and so I heard you say something about the 10%, and then I heard you say something about television and the source that comes from. And by the way, that's the telephones that generate.
I don't know exactly what there's those revenues are allocated to certain things. I don't know what pays for what, but it's
right.
It's all allocated to different. The revenues are allocated to different things. So
basically, you weren't talking about reallocating that, right?
No, we're talking about if we reduce the revenue, though. If we reduce the revenue and it provides something for the population, we have to find a way to backfill that loss of revenue. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just trying to see how does that look. That's all. The details.
No, I know. It's I know.
Because I just wouldn't want determinations made that would ultimately end up negatively impacting the population. It would make me nervous. If we weren't able to get all of the revenue that we would want from the legislature, some of those more internalized options.
I know. I don't want to do it either, right? I mean, that's my biggest concern is impacting on that front. So, yeah, I'm with you.
Commissioner, I have a question.
Hey, hold on a second, please. This is Mark. Gina, could you hold on a second?
Yep.
Commissioner, we kind of jumped into general questions here while you were doing your briefing.
Well, I would just say one other thing, and then we'll move on. Just so you know that on Monday night, I think it's gone out, but there is family of incarcerated persons call. It's a moderated call, and we're going to try it and see how that goes. And at least it will give family members a chance to call in. We'll try it. If it doesn't work, we'll try Facebook Live. But we wanted to try something, and it's really targeted at family members of people who are incarcerated. And we've generated a fairly large list of email addresses and that kind of stuff of family members and so forth. So just to let you know that we're trying to do that as well. So
That's great to hear.
We can hit those questions, Mark, I think.
Okay.
Commissioner, Yep, thanks, Mark. I just have a question for you about the early releases. My friend has a person that is in CIP up north, and he just was curious about whether the people that are in CIP, it's his understanding that they're not really participating in programming right now, and he was wondering if they were going to be eligible for any of the early release, the 90-day early release stuff that is going to be coming up over the next couple of months.
So we are looking at that. There is some statutory provisions in CIP that we're looking at, and that's so legal is researching that whole question because of the requirements at CIP and what early release can mean. So that's the question. We don't know. Asking the case managers and the release planners to look at those people who have CD directives, and if we can find programs in the community to make those referrals and see if we can get them in there.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner, this is Sarah Davis with the Legal Rights Center. I just had a question about the Red Wing Juvenile Facility. It appears that the numbers on the website are not reflecting the juvenile side of that facility for the COVID infection. So first of all, I was just wondering if you could give an update. I know last Friday when you were on the call, you said there were 2 staff who'd been infected and 2 youth who were in quarantine isolation. Has that number changed? And what is the possibility of getting that information to be updated daily like all the other DOC facilities?
So what is it still, what does it say there now? I haven't looked at
it just says 1, and my understanding, I asked Mark about this the other day, and he said that the Red Wing total on there is just for the adult side of the facility, so it doesn't include the youth side.
There are no youth positive cases. So we've been really following some of the CDC stuff, and there's been changes in terms of this whole notion of quarantine with close contact. And so now there's different directions where it's almost like if you're 7 days and you have 3 days without symptoms, we can move people down, kind of, so there's less restricted. And this is all coming from health and the epidemiology folks. There is no youth at all at Red Wing who have COVID or that we have had, that we have in quarantine at this point in time. I think all of them are lifted. We still have the staff, those 2 staff that had tested positive, but my understanding is that everybody else, Sunday is the 2-week mark, but my understanding is that because of the change in the quarantine, And none of those, neither of the youth ever had any symptoms. But they were the first ones we had, in fact, when the staff tested positive. And they had close contact with that staff member. That's what prompted the quarantine directive there. But there is no youth positives there at all. And the other thing that's happening here that makes it also tough is that some of the adult tests can be challenged because we've been trying to use MDH some of the MDH standards, and MDH. At Red Wing, you might have people who live across the river. They live over in Wisconsin. They are not counted in Minnesota's data because they're from Wisconsin, and we have a little bit of this up north, even in Moose Lake, where you have some people who cross over up there, and if they were positive, they may be positive in Wisconsin. We know about it because they've reported it, but they are not in the state's positive data because they go back to Wisconsin. This is one of the challenges. The other thing is we also have staff who have been presumed positive but not tested. In other words, I've had a dry cough, a fever, and what then their doctors will do is presume them positive and put them out, write a doctor's slip saying they're presumed positive and put them out for 14 days or whatever it may be. So we've had that happen as well, and that's been the case all over the place because of the lack of readily available testing.
Do you know if any other staff at Red Wing have been presumed positive?
Just the two.
Okay, and then is it, just to follow up on my initial question, is it possible to get that data updated on the website so that the youth facility is actually included?
Now, the other thing that happens is that, I'll do that. I'll talk to them about that. Yeah.
In jails as well?
We don't have jail data. I can tell you though that we require the jails to report to us, but if somebody we've asked them or directed them to report, but if they didn't report, we wouldn't necessarily know it because we don't get it if they don't provide it, and that and right now, as of right now, based on what I've been told and even talking to health, there are no positives in county jails.
Is there a reason you're not posting staff testing data?
Because exactly, we are anticipating we are working out a process for that, but remember, it's going to be staff report, because again, many of these people, if their physician said, I'm going to put you out, but they didn't test them, they're going to be a presumed positive. It's strictly staff report. It's not based upon testing data. And I think that's been one of the big concerns we've had. Even Wisconsin is, if you look at, they do post some stuff of staff, but when they post it by staff, they're saying that it's really based on staff self-report because there's no way to get bona fide test result data on all of them.
Okay. Hello, this is Saluki. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, I had a question, and I don't know if it's already been asked, but I've been hearing that the staff, like the guards, are not wearing masks, and I was wondering, can that be made mandatory?
So we have moved that direction at Moose. We can do that. It sounds like it's a simple thing. And we can direct it, but what we should do is we should direct it facility wide. That means everybody, staff and people who are incarcerated.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, because the people who are incarcerated have masks, but it's the guards that would bring it in and the staff that would bring it into the prisons.
Right. I understand, but the challenge either way is going to have to be that we go facility wide. There has been some conversations with some of the kind of unit living councils, and there was some not so positive feedback about requiring that across the board.
Why is that?
Well, just because some people, you talk to some of the folks in the living councils, they're saying, look, I don't want to be forced to wear it, so then what if I decide I don't want to, then I'm going to get gigged for it?
Well, being this is a deadly disease, maybe they should be benched if they don't want to wear a mask.
Yeah.
It's not for their safety.
I'm talking.
I have strong feelings about that.
Yeah.
And I have talked to Red Wing. I've talked to Faribault, Shakopee, and Stillwater, and they are not wearing masks.
They're not mandatory. They're all issued. They're not mandatory. We have not gone mandatory yet. It is being reviewed for mandatory.
Okay.
There's another challenge with that, and that is right now we've issued one mask per person. That in itself creates some problems because daily use of the mask, and you can have the COVID particles on the mask. So we are in the process of issuing a second mask to everybody and getting those made and put out. So these are just some of the challenges that we're working through, but we're moving in that direction. But it's always a little bit more complicated than I wish it was.
Okay, now I had another question. So now the masks that are being made in Stillwater and Shakopee, are those masks being made for those facilities, or are they being made for other facilities?
They're being made for the entire system. So right now, I think Moose Lake, Shakopee's been making them for Shakopee. I think Shakopee's are done. I think Moose Lakes are done. Stillwater is done. They've been issued. The other people in the system have been issued paper masks right now. But they don't last very long, and there's just so the cloth masks are being done. They're turning about 1,000 a day, and the goal is to give everybody two as a starting point. And we're hoping that by the end of next week they'll have massive progress in that direction of having just about two of them out to everybody. But that's okay.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I had heard about the facilities making masks, but they weren't for sure who they were for in Shakopee. I know in Stillwater they were being made for Stillwater. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Let's go to the next question, please, because we got a lot of questions.
Commissioner,
I have a question about. I'm sorry. Yeah, I have a question about the minimum facilities. So I know that there are dining in shifts, and I know that that's been helpful. But what about the fact that they are all in dormitory type settings, and they're 200. Some are 200 people. Inmates in a facility, but they're all sleeping in the same quarters. So, and they're not able to obviously move from, that room where they're with other inmates. How are they going to do that?
So the social distancing issue is a major concern, and here, we've looked at a variety of different options for this, and many of them are not. I know some will say just let them go, and I get that argument, but I would just say that that's all those folks will be reviewed as the review process goes. But right now, one of the things they were looking at, we really have been trying to focus on maximizing our capacity. So what that means is that as we release people and as we slow the intake process down, so we bring less people in. Last week, if you look at population shift, just naturally, this is not with any releases, we're down about 100 in a week, roughly 100. And some of that is just the slowed in, and then, we release probably about between around 250 to 300 a month as a regular course of activity. So we're trying to grow capacity, and we're not moving anybody else out to minimum. So as people leave there, we can get more distancing between them. The alternative becomes bringing people back in, and I can tell you into some of the spaces where we are getting. Right now, Stillwater is very close to single bunked. I think we are, very close to single bunked. Now, that's not the case in some of the treatment programs, still has dorm stuff. So those are some places where we're going to have to continue to work on how we get space. But really, ultimately, our goal is by doing some of these releases, working those releases out, and then the attrition, slowing down the influx, we get more ability to move people around to manage even outbreaks. I think Moose Lake, as much as I would like to have not had it happen at all, it did, and I think we're getting to the point of being on the other side of it. But so that's the best answer I can provide. It's one of those things we're stuck with.
Commissioner, on that population reduction note, you spoke earlier about things you're looking at for possible executive order. Is there anything that you're looking at there that you think would help with either intake or release from an executive order?
Yeah, so just on executive, there have been some people who've encouraged us to use executive order to, like Wisconsin, to stop all intakes from county jails. I just will tell you that I'm not a supporter of that, because ultimately all we've done is we've put pressure somewhere else. And based upon where we are population-wise, not that we still would like to have more capacity and that kind of stuff, but we're in that 8,800 area right now, which we haven't been at since 1993 or 94, something like that. And so we are getting down there. I'm not saying that there isn't more room, but to move down. But I'm not going to ultimately put that back on the counties to manage. We've had some conversations about executive order for releases. I will just tell you that on the whole, I'm not, and again, it's not my decision, it's ultimately the governor's decision, but I'm not a big fan of just doing executive orders for releases. I think we have some capacity, because no matter what we do, I don't think executive orders would ever grant releases homeless, so I think, and that's been right now, even in the 90-day group, as we look at them, that has been one of our biggest challenges, is that housing thing, as I mentioned. So,
but isn't the governor looking for your recommendations, Commissioner? And aren't there some things that could be changed in policy that could get you closer to that 180 days?
Yeah, well, there are some things we can look at, even from a work release standpoint. We can go up to 180 days, but we also have to make
constrained by policy in what some of that you can do, and the governor could suspend some of those policies through executive order.
Well, some of it perhaps, but remember, at 50% of sentence, a person generally can be eligible for work release. So, you could talk about late early release. Now, it's not an effective measure. Work release is not effective for long-time releases like that. We see this with people who, go for, longer than 8 months, and we've had some people out there longer than 8 months, especially on some of the folks transitioning on life or parole, and they will talk about the fact that it becomes very challenging to be in work release that long, and so to do things that are really long like that becomes an issue. So we have a lot more a lot more ability to go beyond 90 days, but we also have to make sure that the back end of the system has the capacity to provide the supports and do the work and at least provide some of the basic monitoring that's going to be that the public's going to expect or demand. And so we've been having conversations with with the counties, and we've been pulling some of our staff from other areas to help with that. But I think when we look at the totality of the circumstances, just to do that without him making sure that there's some mechanisms of support and process, I think that's going to be the challenge.
So could I just kind of
clarify
rephrase what I'm hearing you say? It sounds like you're saying that based on the constraints of releasing people, in the way that you think it should be done, it wouldn't help to expand your current authority.
If
you're doing the most you can right now with the authority you have.
I mean, I think we can get more. The constraints we can work through, and I think we're trying to do that. I'm not saying we wouldn't. The straight 180, like your bill, just made it pretty easy. Although there were still some elements that we had to do in that. Like a release plan and some of those sorts of things. Yep. And some of those constraints are going to be the challenges, whether it's at 6 months or 3 months or a year. And I think there are things that we have to do to work on addressing those constraints. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think, I'm not sure if we disagree or not, but we can talk about it more.
Good.
Commissioner,
go ahead.
Are the persons incarcerated being updated on the possibility of release? And what's making me ask that question is the recent uprising in Kansas and the prisons. We want to avoid that. So are you updating them that most of them may possibly be released soon?
But I don't. There's a lot of conversation. I can tell you that there's a ton of discussion going on because I'm getting a lot of kites sent down. I'm getting letters. There's a ton of information. Mm-hmm. I also do not want to create unrealistic expectations that there's going to be, that we're going to see 2,000 people, 1,000 people being released. Now, unless, that the courts would direct that or some mechanism like that. I don't want to create unrealistic expectations around release, but there's information out there that early releases are happening because, we know that some of the folks that I've heard, even from some of the people, family members of some of the people I know are going to be going next week, so there's information out there.
But nothing formal from your office, nothing formal from you.
No, not yet, because we just literally we haven't had, other than that one woman who the pregnant mom who went out 6 days before SRP. Right. We haven't had anybody else go. So once we get this process finalized, we're going to publish the emergency policy, because this is being done through an emergency policy. Because otherwise, there's a kind of a whole complete policy around standard work release, that policy will be published. I just saw a version of it today, and I think Monday that should be finalized.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, it's Marlon Nazaris.
Yep.
I just want to quickly ask. I asked it last week and haven't really got a clear answer. As far as the 180 days, are people that are currently at work release going to be looked at to be able to move on sooner to open up beds at them facilities for potential work release people to come out and clear up space inside the facilities?
Yeah, they are work release right now. Work release they're trying to get these other people out and address that stuff. So I think once we get some of these people moving, I think that is the plan to try and see if we can free up some of those beds. Some of the facilities are less than thrilled about bringing people in, not for any other reason than they're just with the COVID stuff. We have to work through that, but that is something we want to try and do. And I've done the same thing. I've asked our folks, our agents at least, to if we have people that are adjusting well on probation and so forth, to see if they can petition the court for early discharge or reducing supervision parameters if we have good adjustment in order to get capacity. I've asked for that, asked for them to do that.
Okay.
Commissioner, I have some questions about. I want to get this one up because I've gotten some questions from families about meals that I know are variable. They're brought to 2 meals a day, breakfast and dinner. Couple of questions: is that temporary, or how long might it last? And then, how are you making sure they're getting the right amount of food?
So they are at 2, and this is going to speak a little bit. So first of all, let me just say that the meals are calorically.
That's system-wide.
No, it's some of it. Not every facility is at 2. So here's the deal: is that first of all, it is the calorically balanced, so that we make sure that the same calorie levels are there. So number one. Number two is part of the reason for this is because of the social distancing goal, and then making sure that people had exercise or out time was a key thing. So we're trying to balance people getting people out and making sure that they get rec and flight time and some of those sorts of things, and then also having social distancing, because we were getting hammered from people on the outside about and inside about, you're putting a shoulder to shoulder and in the dining room, and so this is the response as that, and especially there because you have a couple thousand people, and that ended up being the best way to do it. So that's the reason at that facility.
And you said you're keeping the daily calorie intake the same?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The daily calories are the same.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. It was also a snack.
Commissioner, I had a question.
Oh, Jesus.
You had mentioned before about treatment.
Yeah.
And my question was, like there's some people on parole that were going to meetings and now they can't go. I was wondering, are there any plans from the POs to help them out?
You mean in terms of like to get them to meetings?
Well, I know they can't go to meetings, but are there anything being done, like for instance, virtual meetings, like what we're doing now, for instance, or something, for people who are really struggling with sobriety at this point?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's probably people on this call that may know some of that better than I do. The system we've done just tried to do some modification, but I would imagine the treatment community might have some of those available options and that kind of stuff. But I'm not the best person to ask.
So Commissioner, Brother Wayne from POP and Freedom Works, there are a lot of treatment groups that are out there that are doing just that. They're using Zoom, they're using other means, either by telephone or by video conferencing with their groups. Some are doing it individually, and some are doing it as a huge group. So those things are going on right now in the treatment community.
Good, thank you.
Okay, well, Brother Wayne, I'll talk to you about that then, because I got a phone call and somebody's concerned about their sobriety and they didn't want to relapse.
Yeah, I mean, I just heard about within the last month that somebody had an unauthorized device that was supposed to be going through a treatment program, and they got sent back to prison or at Lionel Lakes until they complete treatment. So that's another story too to bring up or to know about.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Other questions?
All right. Well, we're at about an hour, so that's great. Thanks, Commissioner, for your availability and time, and thanks everybody for continuing to advocate and spending the time with us this afternoon. Have a great week.
And we'll plan it for next Friday. And again, family member stuff. If there's, I don't know exactly how that is. But I think if you are a family member or whatever, we'll find out how you access that phone number. I'm just not sure exactly.
Yeah,
how that
I can send that to this group. I mean, I assume most who work with families have already seen that, but I can. I'll send the email from DOC about that to this group after the call.
Okay, sounds good. Excellent.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank you.
Yep. Stay healthy.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.